Now, is Alan Jones still talking to you, mate?
Yes. We are great mates.
Oh, they are great mates. But there was one stage in the history of Graham Richardson as I followed it, and I guess I followed you from the early 80s. You became more well-known by about mid-80s, didn't you? Like, you were there.
Yeah, yeah. Fame takes a while to occur.
But there was a time there where you and James seemed really close. But then you seemed far more objective about Labor governments and whatever. You seem to have gone back to your roots. Is that a fair call or not?
No.
Okay.
No, I try very hard to referee both sides.
Okay.
But the fact that I'm saying that Shorten's going to win has naught to do with bias. Every poll for two and a half years tells you he's going to win. I can't see how he gets beaten. So I haven't changed at all. But the political reality of today is that, Scott's a friend of mine and all that, but I think Australia are just quietly determined that they're going to change government, and they will do so.
Do you think Labor's better at politics, and until the revolving door of Prime Ministers, the coalition was better at government?
Look, I think that when you are well led, it doesn't matter which party you're in, you'll be a good government. Hawke and Keating ran good governments. Howard ran a good government. And really the difference between the major parties is pretty minor these days. Mostly when you vote, you realise that the only real difference is industrial relations. Otherwise, you're voting on competence, because Labor's dropped any semblance of socialism in reality. So it's simply another party out there for your vote, and they do their best to mirror the desire of the Liberals and the coalition to run a good economy. I don't think Labor anymore is a sort of spendthrift. There's no, remember when Whitlam had a government, he appointed Jim Cairns as Treasurer, which showed how much he thought of economics. And all Jim Cairns did for his budget was add up the asks of every minister, and that was the budget, which is ludicrous. There was no rigour, nothing applied to it. I think Labor learned a lot of lessons out of that, so Keating was very different to that in the Hawke government. And I think this time around, people like Bowen and Chalmers are pretty sensible economists. They won't do anything silly.
But on that subject, there'd be a few people in the room who'd like me to pull a dagger out and shove it through your heart on the franking credits issue. Now, you're a really smart political and analyst, because there's other words after the word political, but it seems to me that there are a lot of Labor voters who have created self-managed super funds for themselves, and they might be getting $7,000 or $10,000 rebates, which makes their life good. They might be on $40,000 plus their franking credits, that's $50,000. They follow the rules, and these ex-Labor voters, not doctors, or some doctors, but police, teachers, and who've followed the greats like Peter Switzer into self-managed super funds. Is this a risky political play?
It's a dumb political play. I don't have to agree with everything that Labor does.
He deserves an applause, I think. Because it will be my headline tomorrow, by the way.
But I think I get annoyed with fiddling with superannuation at all. Everyone's had a hack at it, and I don't know how you plan properly for your future if people are going to keep having a hack at it. And so my view is that both sides of politics should simply leave super alone where it is, so everybody can plan for the rest of their days. And I get really annoyed. I think too often our blokes have seen it as an easy cash cow, and it's just the wrong way to look at it.
Do you think that the Senate might stop them or make those changes a little bit more palatable to retirees who aren't rich?
Oh, no doubt about it. working with the Senate these days is pretty much impossible anyway. I think when I was a minister, we didn't have the numbers in the Senate ever, but you only had to win a few Democrats, and they were pretty dopey. It wasn't too hard to win them. But these days, you've got a whole interesting lot of odd bods and sods, and they're hard to corral, really hard, because they have very different views. You know, a Tim Storer in South Australia agrees with almost nothing that Pauline Hanson or Clive Palmer think. You know, yeah, it's very hard to just get all of those numbers in the Senate, and it requires great management and skill. I think Matthias Cormann has been spectacularly good at it, and we'll have to hope Penny Wong is as good after May.
So, do you think that the coalition should emphasise the impact of the negative gearing changes and the capital gains discount changes and its impact on house prices, and just say, if you want the value of your house to go down, vote Labor? Would that be something, if you were representing the coalition, you'd say push it?
Yeah, it's not as good as you think, because a lot of people don't own houses.
Yeah.
So it's got some merit,
Yeah.
but on its own, it ain't enough. You've got to have a lot more than that. And I think what Morrison will do, because you know, he hasn't done much, let's face it, it doesn't matter whether you're a Liberal or not, he hasn't got a great record of achievement to run on. So what he'll run on is a scare campaign on Labor. And it's pretty easy to get people scared of Bill, so he'll be off and running.
Yeah. I think he's done a brilliant piece of work, Scott, on economics, but I did teach him economics, so I'm bloody biased when it comes to that. Okay, I don't understand this. You've got homeowners.
How come then he allows debt to go where it is?
Yeah,
did you teach him that?
Yeah. Look, look. It's just basically, it works this way. If you've got a really good business where the sales are coming through the front door, you can afford to borrow. And Australia is one of the greatest economies in the world, Richard. 28 years without a recession. And a lot of it was even good Labor policies during Keating and Hawke. And also, as a speaker earlier said today, Labor Party got it right when the Great Depression was threatening, the GFC. But the bottom line is, you've got to get an economy growing first to pay back the debt, and you've got to get budget surpluses to pay back the debt. It was a consequence of the GFC, and you guys were the first one to run the debt up, because you had to save unemployment going to 10%. And it was very hard to pull it back right away. So he was like an accessory after the fact. It was your mob who actually increased it the first time. But I don't want to fight with you. I'm not paying you to fight with you. I want you to make me look good here. All right.
It's a hell of a task.
you son of a bitch. All right. So, but I put the numbers together, because you're the numbers man. In fact, I bought your book in Glenferrie Road, Melbourne, the other day for $2. It was a Salvation Army, and I felt so guilty. I walked past it, and I thought, I've got to buy this. It's a good book too. I recommend you getting it. All right, homeowners, add the self-funded retirees, small business owners, and rural people. Isn't that a large group of people that the coalition should be able to win over to stop Labor from winning this election?
Yeah, it is, and you wonder why they haven't. It seems to me that the situation is ripe for the coalition to do well. They've got plenty of grounds to campaign on. They just don't appear to have the will at the moment. They seem to flounder, and I don't quite understand why. You know, they've got plenty to say if only they'd say it. And I'd like to see a contest. I always want to see a contest, and there's not really a contest at the moment. If you look at it, I think it's 2.5 years since they were in front in a poll. Yep. It's a long time, and this is every poll. So you know, I think Labor are entitled to be red-hot favourites.
Have you ever worked out why the preferred Prime Minister poll means nothing in an election? Like in the USA, it's everything, isn't it? Like if Trump's leading Clinton by miles, Trump's going to become president. But here, like Morrison's been killing Bill, and it has really little impact on the two-party preferred.
Yeah, you have in America a different system, obviously, and you vote directly for them. You don't here, and so I don't think you can compare. And I don't think Morrison's been killing Bill either. I think he's in front, but he's not killing him. If you look at
Only on the polls, preferred Prime Minister.
Yeah, no, preferred Prime Minister. Yeah, he's been well in front, but the incumbents usually are, aren't they?
Yeah.
If you have a look at history.
Well, I think even Malcolm Turnbull was ahead of Shorten for most of the time as well. Yeah.
God help us.
All right. Was it a smart decision from the coalition to get rid of Malcolm?
Absolutely. I mean, yeah. I
was Malcolm Turnbull's patrol captain at North Bondi, so be careful.
I first met him 35 years ago. I thought he was an arsehole then. Nothing has changed. Nothing. Excuse me for the language.
I better take him off our database before I send this one out, mate. Okay. Have people made up their mind?
Yeah, I think they've made up their mind for quite some time. And I think the Turnbull fiasco just solidified them. There's a quiet determination. It's not like Wayne Goss once talked about people with baseball bats and all that. It's not like that. But I think the win will be decisive for Shorten. I don't think it'll be close.
Richo, transfiguration. I know you're a man of the Bible, so you probably know what I'm talking about here. I actually did use the term in 1985 when I had a column in the Sun Herald in those days. And I used it because the Bob Hawke and Paul Keating I saw before 1983 were very different people from the ones I saw in 1985. And I figured that, like the Transfiguration story in the Bible, the apostles were taken up top of the mountain and basically Jesus showed them what the real world was all about. Does this happen? Do politicians, like lefty-looking Labor leaders, and I'm just doing this as a hypothetical example, imagine a lefty Labor leader who might be going to the polls with policies that really scare the pants off a lot of people. When they get into power, do people actually tell them how they really have to behave?
They don't get into power. People like that, in Australia just don't get elected. The only lefty at the moment elected really is Andrews, and he's as left as I am in reality.
How did he do that?
Because he had no opposition. Matthew Guy couldn't blow out a candle, and was a total failure. But Andrews just has a way about him. He's a different politician. He's nothing like anything I've ever seen. The only other dominant state politician apart from Joe that I recall is Neville Wran, and the difference between Neville Wran and Daniel Andrews is massive. Yeah. So I don't understand what makes Andrews tick. But then again, he's a Victorian, and I don't understand them either.
You've kind of escaped, because some people in this room might wrongly think that Bill is a lefty. He looks like he's being kicked around by the trade union movement. Look, you can deny it, okay, but this is what they think, all right? So
Bill?
Yeah.
He's never been on the left.
I know, but it looks like he's on the left. How many of those people here who wrongly think that Bill looks like a lefty? Just give Graham an idea. So, see, there are misguided people in Australia.
There are.
But to them, he looks left. And some people think that part of his attack on self-managed super funds is to help the industry super fund industry. And I think industry super funds are good funds, but it looks like the changes will force some people to say, I'm not going to do this anymore, I'm going back to industry super funds. Is he being influenced by the people in the super industry and the trade union movement to a degree? Be honest.
I don't really believe so. I think what he's influenced by is just winning. He's desperate to win. There's no doubt about that. And it's a whatever it takes situation, I think, if I can use that phrase. He is desperate. He can't afford to lose. If he loses, his career's over. He just drifts away into the background as a great big failure. And so this is everything for Bill, this election. And he's going flat out. I don't think he has anything else in mind than that. He doesn't need to be pushed by people in the superannuation funds. He runs a line that's a little bit old-fashioned, a rich and poor line. I think he does do a bit of that.
That makes him look leftish.
Which he does, and I don't like that line. But Wayne Swan did that too. And
yeah, but Wayne was a little bit left, wasn't he?
No.
Gee, he looked left to me.
Just, he looks dumb to me, but anyway, that's another
I won't go any further on that. All right, so I read something brilliant last week, which I wrote, and I'm sure you read it as well. And I just said, look, I just hope Bill's a liar, because some of the policies he's got, I hope he backs down on. Do you think some of the policies that we're all afraid of, he will in the end either be forced by the Senate or by his own party to say, like for example, I think it would be dumb to introduce negative gearing on January 1 if the house prices are still collapsing.
He's got Buckley's getting that through the Senate, I reckon.
Okay.
It's Buckley's.
Okay.
So, you can have these policies, but delivering on them is pretty difficult. You ask Matthias Cormann what it's been like. I mean, he's been as good as you can get at managing a difficult situation when you don't have the numbers. But even he will tell you that there's a hell of a lot of stuff they didn't even try to get up because they knew they couldn't. And that's something that every government from here on will live with. I mean, I can't imagine a time when a government gets a majority in the Senate. I don't think we'll ever see it.
I'm going to ask the audience to answer a couple of questions before we go. But I have to ask you this question. Who was the greatest Labor leader who you worked with?
Neville Rand. Extraordinary man. What was great about Neville was he always knew what the mob were thinking before the mob thought it. He was incredible at being in touch. Now, think about this. He's an incredibly successful QC, right? So he's got the big flash house at Point Piper and all that, or Darling Point, wherever it was, doesn't matter either, does it? But he's got the big flash house. He's making all this money, and yet he could always tell what someone in the street at Liverpool thought. He always instinctively knew, and he was unerringly correct. So I was a great admirer of Neville's. He could be a bit of an arsehole at times, but use that word again. I remember once I brought the ALP ticket to for the upper house up to him, and it had a woman called Kath Anderson, who some of you may remember, on it, and he didn't want her. He wanted someone else, and so, because I always gave him one on the ticket, I said, all right. So we put in another woman who was Frank Arena, who ratted anyway. When Kath died, he got up at the funeral and he said, I could never understand why the powers that be, me, ever kicked her out of the upper house. That was Neville. I mean, he was a classic. But I think he was a brilliant man, and I think he cared. One of the things that you've got to always look at in your polls is, do they care? Do they give a damn? And whatever else you thought of him, he certainly did.
While I was listening to you, I thought of a question that I've held in since 1982, even before I didn't know you. And I'll tell you what, when Paul Keating was looking to win the seat of, it was Bankstown, what was the name of the seat? I can't remember. Wherever it was his first seat in Parliament. And the Ferguson family was supporting...
Blaxland.
And the Ferguson family, which was a pretty strong Labor family, were backing a guy who I taught with at University of New South Wales, a guy by the name of Bill Junior.
That's right.
Yeah. And Paul was the other candidate. And the story was that in one of the areas where there was voting, a box went missing on the back of a motorbike with Laurie Brereton with that box. And the numbers inexplicably went to Paul Keating. Now, is there any? I know you. Yeah,
No truth in that whatsoever. No truth in that
no, true
whatsoever.
at all.
That was a hotly contested pre-selection.
Yeah.
It was really, and it was always tight.
Yeah.
And Paul narrowly won.
Yeah.
And thank God. I mean, did anyone really think Bill Junior would have lit up the skies?
No, but the funny thing was that Bill Junior was a really well-trained economist, and Paul was someone who knew nothing about economics, but certainly learnt of it.
He picked it up, didn't he?
He picked it up. But I always thought it was quite an interesting irony, and I think we know there possibly might have been a motorbike incident in there somewhere as well. But I won't hold you to it. Now,